Welcome to Shrink and Shrink Undistort in IC3D. In this example, we're going to wrap a film around multiple items and then compensate for the distortion of the artwork. I'm going to start with a single item, in this case a can of beans. We can replicate those can of beans using the duplicate function, and we'll set up a 2x2. Very quickly we have our set of beans. Now I'm just going to spin the labels for a more realistic effect, because our manufacturing process perhaps is not quite as regulated as would appear. And there we have our beans we're going to wrap. We select all the food cans over on the left in the object editor, and we drag the shrink in over the top of them. This will open the shrink film template window. And here we can see it's by default puts a vertical wrap, but we're going to switch that to a horizontal wrap. Now, if you have the artwork already, you can start by specifying the lay flat, the long lap and the short lap, and which direction the long lap is, whether it's at the top of the film or at the bottom of the film. But if you're like me on this one, you have no idea what those values should be, you can start experimenting or putting in values that are under the basic setup, which makes it much easier to generate this type of thing where you don't know the artwork sizes. The nice thing is we know we need a 50mm overlap, and we know we need to move this down to about there on the artwork, so it's all interactive, we can see where it's going. We need to make sure we have the default horizontal shrink wrap substrate on there. This puts a bias on the actual shrink as it's actually happening to create the correct effects. You would obviously create some of these for your own particular shrink films that you might be using to get even more accurate results than are portrayed by the defaults. You can save those and reuse them again and again in your substrate editor here. So once I'm happy with the settings, if I want to know what the artwork settings for that should be, I can switch to advanced now, and it will tell me what the lay flat of that design is, what the long lap and short lap options should be set up in the artwork. I'm going to swap the overlap direction because we want the bottom on the top, and if I do start simulation, that simulation will kick off. We are showing this in real time here, and something this complicated would probably take a minute and a half to shrink to the level that we need it to shrink. Now it's important to note that this is a simulation, in which case it's not a process that has a start and stop. You are the judge as to where the correct point to stop this is. And when you are happy the results are representing the type of shrink you would normally expect to see, you can press stop simulation, and it will freeze the simulation at that point and create you a model on which to put your artwork. If at any time you're unhappy, you can press stop simulation. Perhaps you've forgotten to change a setting, press undo. Settings are all kept as per. Change whatever you need to change and press start simulation again, and within a few seconds you'll be back to where you were before. Now I'm letting this run in real time so you can see how powerful the actual shrink is on this type of product. It's worth noting that this is just running on an Apple MacBook Pro, nothing particularly powerful or exceptionally fast. and even more powerful Macs will produce much faster results. It's being run in Windows here, but it can equally run this whole software and runs faster in a Macintosh OS X. So we're looking to see that the shrink goes flat at the side, and that is a good marker for us that the actual shrink process has reached a real world situation. And I think we're happy about that. And we'll stop that. Okay, add model into the scene. And here we have our full pack of beans with the shrink film around them. Now the actual material that the shrink is on, just like all IC3 materials, is editable. So if you want to start playing around with the colour of it, or the shininess, or the transparency level, you can do. We link to Illustrator, and this will load all the artwork from the models into Illustrator where we can edit it. Now we have 4 bean counts, so we have 4 count labels, and the last one is the shrink film artwork itself. Now I have a copy of it here from some artwork I did earlier, and to save time I'm just going to cut and paste that in and update that directly onto the artwork. And we can see in a matter of moments that we have our shrink film over our artwork. But we also see that we have some distortions created by the actual shrinking process. This is a classic example of where we might use shrink undistort to correct the artwork for this case. Now because all of this artwork section is all on one facing plane, facing towards us, none of it goes round the corner, we can use our first distortion method called front view. To do that, I'm just going to lock the background so I don't keep selecting it, and then we're just going to choose the 2 elements that are here, do object, envelope, undistort, make with mesh. I'm going to use 10 rows by 10 columns. It really doesn't matter, the finer they are, the more detail you have, but in general it doesn't make an awful lot of difference. And we will do OK. And we're going to use the extended warp mesh options to create a front view and do apply. And you can see within seconds Illustrator's picked up where the shrink mesh should be and has created a distortion mesh for that. If I update that down to IC3D, we can now see those results. And because it's a front view, at the middle point here when we are looking at it, the sides appear to be straight. And we can apply that to any part or component that we want to. A classic might be the IC3D beans here. So if I go back to that, select the one here, and do object, envelope, distort, make with mesh, do front view again, we can see that that compensates for that distortion, and we can see it pop in over on this side. And there we have it. Now there is a second type of distortion which is used for when things go round corners. It's best to show this by moving some of the artwork in here. So if I undo the shrink distortion we did on there and move this artwork over to the edge here and do update, we can see that this artwork is round the edge here and gets thoroughly distorted. Now the problem with using a front view is that the front view will clip anything that is not directly in a flat plane of view of here. So for this we use a bidirectional step, and if I go back we use the same process as before: envelope, distort, make with mesh, rows and columns, but in this case we're using to use bidirectional step. And we can update that. And here we can see that when we're looking at it bang in the center of it, it's made a very good attempt at creating the perfect oval. And that concludes the demo for doing shrink, undistort on a wrap.